fees out there and premiums, and he's going to share a lot of advice with us. Chris is also a speaker ninja. I just have a list here of some keynotes that he recently has done. Dreamforce, Social Tools Summit, Demandbase, IBM Conference, HubSpot, PRSA Boston, Social Media Strategies Summit, Social Media Marketing World, Blog World Expo, Wharton Web Conference, and I'm interested in knowing more about the National Shooting Sports Association. Thank you for the keynote for. Chris also has a best-selling book that is AI for Marketers. And those of you who are in a hot spot, good luck tonight. Chris has some really great information for you. And please enjoy and have a great evening. Chris.
Thank you. All right, so what we're going to be doing tonight is, originally it was going to be actually forcing somebody to sit up here on an uncomfortable stool under an interrogation light and prying at their fingers with pliers, but that's both inadvisable and when we looked at a lot of the data that people had submitted for their social accounts, the problem wasn't necessarily what could I be doing with social better, so much as it is what's happening out there and how do we use it to gain competitive advantage. So what we're going to talk about tonight, and we're going to use some of the folks who did submit their information to at least do some exploratory stages, is the process of using advanced technologies like artificial intelligence to create and to power your social media marketing processes. Talkwalker is the platform that I use. I've been using it for over a year now. There is actually some fairly good machine learning behind the scenes of that, and any of these sections of this deck here where there's a little footprint icon, we'll be using the platform to demonstrate it. I believe Todd said that for folks who did register through the Google form, you'll be eligible for a 1-week free trial of the quick search feature of Talkwalker. So you'll get many, many, many emails about that. All right. So the beginning of any process for your social media is to do that inventory. So look at what is available. So let's switch over here into the Talkwalker platform. The most important thing for social listening is to be able to identify yourself and your competitors, the competitive space that you're in, and ideally the industry that you're in. So let's take a look here. Where should we start tonight? Bill, you want to start with Kicker? Bill, you want to start Kicker?
Sure.
All right. So the first thing you do when you get access to any of these tools is to immediately start doing a very quick assessment of what is even happening. So here we have Kicker Audio, and because the name of Bill's company is actually a technological component, it is very difficult to disambiguate it from background noise. Bill, what were you saying earlier? There's a sports team that's also named Kicker or something like that?
There is a British shoe company.
A British shoe company named Kicker. There is, and it is actually an audio component, so it's very difficult to figure out what exactly is his. So one of the things you would do in your inventory stage is to use some of the machine learning tools built in to say, like, this is actually about me, even though this seems relevant, this is not about me, and eventually train the software to recognize only the things that are about you. The first place we start is to take a look at what's happening, in which in this case there's not a ton of volume, about 62 results in the past. You want to start by looking at the performance of those results. Let's switch over here. What are the general mentions? How many of them? What sort of engagements do you have? Potential reach I wouldn't worry too much about, but this gives you at least a starting point. Bill, what happened on Friday, March 15th? Do you know by any chance? Because you got a lot of really good engagement on that day.
We offended quite a few people.
So let's switch to sentiment right away.
I believe it was President's Day. We decided to take a speaker and, well, we put Donald Trump here on it. And that created some codifying results, pro and con.
Yep. That probably then would be in the basics would be probably something to not do. Again. Although, so let me ask you this though, because this is important when it comes to social media analytics and for understanding brands. Did you get good results out of the campaign?
Oh my God, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. About double the normal likes. I learned the hard way what MAGA means.
Yes.
Didn't know that before. We got more visits to the site.
Okay.
About quadruple normal.
Yep.
So yeah, by and large, we got about 10 times the number of follows that we do from a normal post. So yeah, by and large, it was, by the numbers, good. My CEO came up to me, said 2 words, never again.
Yeah.
And that's what we'll do.
How are purchases?
Well, we're primarily a manufacturer.
Okay.
So we don't have, we do have e-com on our site, but primarily we want to build up our dealer base.
Okay.
So it's a harder thing to track.
Okay. How are you tracking branded organic search?
Primarily through combination of apps. More than anything else, a program called SpyFu.
Okay. I would suggest you add Google Search Console into that, because that will give you from the horse's mouth. And that, by the way, is something you can add into Google Data Studio very easily. You can connect your Google Search Console account. So the important point here on this section is that there is an opportunity, if you know your audience super well, which in a platform like this, you would go into something like demographics, for example, to at least start to parse out what some of the demographics of your audience is. And if there's a decent match to of people who are commenting positively about something to your customer base based on your own data from your customer knowledge, that you might make the informed tactical choice to intentionally piss off one half of your audience in order to double the loyalty and purchase volume of another half. A number of brands have done this over the years. Most recently, Patagonia did an enormous campaign that was very political in nature because they wanted to increase the protection and the funding of national forests, which makes complete total sense for their brand. They make outdoors stuff. Chick-fil-A has taken a certain perspective on things. The National Sport Shooting Foundation has taken a certain perspective on things. So one of the things to look at, and this is an important part of your exploratory data analysis, is to look at your data from a tool like Talkwalker, and then go into your Google Analytics, look at your demographic data in there, and see if the people who are converters or purchasers match your audience. If there's a match for something that you did that was polarizing with your converters, then you may want to make that informed tactical decision that, yeah, this is something that we should do again. Even if the CEO says never again, obviously don't do it because you'll get fired. But there is that opportunity as well. So moving on from just the basics of exploration, you want to do an inventory of your content and how it is performed. So if we go back into results here, once you set up analytics, you can actually start exporting all of your data. So in this case, we have all the different metrics, and there's a decent number of things like likes and engagement. But when you export the actual data from the platform, okay, I'm switching projects. Let's go to what you'll get out of the software is the ability to look at every single social post that either you have made or that has mentioned you, and all of the metrics about it. The next step you want to do is to take this data and start slicing it up. You'll sort by whatever metric matters to you most, whether it is likes, maybe it's engagements, maybe it's reach, whatever that you care about most. You'll want to sort your data from greatest number to the lowest number, and then break it out into anywhere from quartiles to deciles, meaning top, middle, and bottom 25%, or 10% ranks. It is then incumbent upon you to use your knowledge of your company and your audience to decide what the top 10% or the top 25% all have in common. Was it certain posts? Was it certain themes? Was it certain information? Albert, question for you. Can you do quartile sorting within Talkwalker itself, or do you have to do the export? No, Todd's shaking his head no. Okay. So that would be a next step in your exploratory data analysis, is to look at those analytics, look at the top 10%, what does all have in common? Once you do that, let's say, for example, there are a number of folks who were event marketing agencies or experiential agencies that submitted. You want to start expanding your knowledge of the space about what it is that people say. So let's go into event marketing. There's the folks from Rose Gold here. No, good, okay, I can say crazy things about them.
You can vouch them as much as you want.
In your own content, you would take a look to see what are the sort of the general terms and themes that are occurring within your data. But once you get a general sense, you start setting up topical searches that are not branded, that don't have your company name or immediate competitors. Instead, you look at common hashtags for major events. So let's go to event profs. So if you are an event marketing agency or an experiential agency and you are trying to get more business, there is this whole series of hashtags and things called event profs. These are people who all they do is do events, right? That's literally everything that they seem to focus on. They have their own conferences. There's an experiential marketing summit. There's Event IT 19. This is how you start to build out the broad topics for your space. Looking at what's being shared at conferences, and then even possibly going into some of these event websites. Let's go to experiential marketing. Experiential Marketing Summit. If you want a fast, easy, simple way to build a content calendar for a topic map for your industry, go to your industry's largest event, select all, copy and paste the entire agenda for the event. There's all the topics that everybody cares about in your event because it's already at a conference. Like if you look at something like Social Media Marketing World, right? It doesn't take rocket science or machine learning to pull the agenda for Social Media Marketing World of all the sessions, especially since we have this lovely app that tells you how many people are registered for each session to see what's most popular. And that is stuff that if that is your industry, you should 100% be building content around. So the second step in the process is all about expanding your general content. This, by the way, is something you then hand to your search teams, right? People who are doing organic SEO, people who are doing PPC. When you're using social intelligence and combining it with good old-fashioned common sense and exploratory mining, you can come up with better search research in a lot of cases than your search teams do, because SEO folks, and I used to be one, tend to fall down rabbit holes, very, very niche specific things, and they don't always see the big picture. If you are an experiential marketing search marketer, that's a mouthful, and you're doing things like, best event marketing agency, an event marketing agency, Tampa, Florida, an event marketing planning company, but you may not know that event profs is actually where you should be spending a good amount of time. Well, you may not know that that's something you want to create content around and try and rank for. So that's sort of step 2 in this process of you want to enrich your knowledge of the space by going up, trying to figure out what's out there and doing validation with those broad topic lists. Within Talkwalker's Quick Search, let's go ahead and switch over to this.
Chris, what do you do with the text file that you copied and pasted?
You can throw it in a Word doc, put it in the Excel spreadsheet, and hand it to your search marketing team and say, hey, use this for ideas. There's a more advanced way to parse it out. There's a machine learning technique you can use to parse out the most important phrases, but for a 200-line file, that's overkill. That's like using the Death Star to swat a fly.
What if you put it in a word cloud?
It would be cloudy. The thing that you would want to do is actually, I don't like word cloud tools because they are non-quantitative, right? They don't have any good, useful embedded information for figuring out the importance of phrases. Just they're purely frequency, and they're very, very difficult to make decisions from. If you want to do some kind of analysis, I would actually recommend doing a chatter plot. Chatter plots are a type of analysis that takes 2 or more dimensions, for a set of words like frequency and importance, like rapid keyword analysis, or frequency and pay-per-click cost, for example. And what it allows you to do is pull together grids where the size is your first variable and then the color is the second variable to help isolate and understand what things within your keyword list you want to pay attention to. So if you were to do that from an experiential marketing, or from this example, you would load all those obvious phrases into an SEO tool and export out like difficulty and search volume, and then use any stat software to turn it into a chatter plot so you can see like what's the best combination of low competition and high volume that you want to pay attention to. Does that make sense? Sort of? No?
A little bit.
I love what you said, but no.
Okay, what's not clear?
So chatter plots I got, but the process.
The process for doing that. I'm trying to think if there's an easy way of doing this. Because there's normally I would use the R programming language to take the file apart and process it. So I would take the file apart, run it through a library called UDPipe. UDPipe will explode it and identify all the top keywords within that text file. That would be, so I wouldn't do that for one conference because if it's 200 lines of text, you can do that yourself.
Right, but
However,
then you have more.
I was going to say, however, if you were to download the entire conference program, like including all the session descriptions, or do it for 10 conferences in your space, like VMworld, for example, you could do VMworld and Dreamforce and things like that.
Oracle Open World.
Oracle Open World. But I assume you want to keep an eye on competing conferences as well. But yes, then you would use machine learning to take it apart because that's the fastest way to chew through a lot of text. When we do social analysis, we don't rely on any social monitoring tool because they're all SaaS-based platforms. You know, companies like Talkwalker, they have an obligation to make your interface fast and easy to use. And this kind of mining is exactly the opposite of both of that. Right? This is not easy to use, and it could take if you're mining, like we mined 12 million Instagram posts. That took about 6 hours. No one who buys software online is going to be like, oh, you know, come back in 6 hours for your report. That wouldn't fly. So, but this is how you would do that. You take it apart, do the keyword analysis, and then what comes out of this are both the chatter plots themselves, and then a nice little spreadsheet of the mined phrases that you would then feed into an SEO tool.
And you feed it into the SEO tool, and the SEO tool gives you the chatter plot?
No, you do the chatter plot in R. That's generated in R as well.
Okay.
The SEO tool is where you would then start looking at the other characteristics, like if you wanted to expand the number of keywords you're after, or you wanted to do prediction on those keywords, which we'll get to in a bit. Does that help?
Yep.
Okay. So you go through, obviously choose your top performing content or restart enrichment, and then start building your models as to what terms you want to pay attention to. For SEO tools, there are any number that are really good. SEMrush is exhibiting at the show. Their tool is pretty good. I use Ahrefs, which is a Singapore-based company. Their stuff's also pretty good. At the end of the day, what you want to be able to do is load a text file of terms that you've pulled from something like Talkwalker into here, and then start expanding those terms. So let's look at, let's see, who we have on? Yes. Let's do iron foundries.
Is this a paid version?
Yes. Most SEO tools are probably going to run you $200-300 a month for good additions. There is one that is not bad. That's free. Neil Patel's Uber Suggest. It's a little on the spammy side, but it's the price of it is $0. It is interesting looking. I'm going to show you a quick example of it. You don't know. But most of the paid SEO keyword tools give you the ability to expand your keyword list, to look for phrases that have other that are similar to yours. So cast iron foundry, for example, would be one. When you use an SEO tool and you build a keyword list of the related terms, guess what? Those are terms that you want to send back into your social media monitoring tool. So in this particular case, we have Wapaka Foundry. Am I pronouncing that right? Folks from Wapaka here? Wapaka?
Yep.
Okay. So for your landscape space, instead of just iron foundry, we would have like cast iron foundry, cast iron manufacturing. So,
So it's Boolean.
This section is definitely Boolean, and you can get super fancy. I find fairly often that I end up having to have like paragraph long Boolean searches, particularly good.
Quotation marker on has iron foundries and iron foundries. If that will be listed.
Thanks.
Is it looking at the priority of order when you're doing the Boolean string?
It follows normal order of operations, so things in parentheses stuff get executed first. So the important thing here is that search and social have to go together. The tools should be feeding each other. If they exist separately, if different teams are managing search and social and they're not communicating and not sharing data, you're basically not making the most of tools that you already pay for and data that you already have. So by combining these two things and using them together, you get much better, broader insights about what's happening in your industry. So let's go down there, go back to here.
So, should we be using search terms like our keywords in our socials often, or like how often if they're gonna work together?
Let me table that for a second because there's a whole thing about using search predictively within your social media.
Okay.
We'll get to that shortly, very, very shortly. Actually, no, we're getting to that now.
Okay.
If you're not familiar with it, there is a wonderful free tool called Google Trends that allows you, that's interesting, that allows you to see the back history on a 0 to 100 scale of what Google has seen in the past. So let's do Iron Foundry as an example. Let's go back 5 years. And you start to get a sense of there's sort of an ebb and the flow in these search terms. When you have searchable data like this, the next thing to do is to try and use machine learning to forecast it forward. This is a relatively predictable flat. There's no crazy anomalies here, which means that you can use machine learning to forecast this forward to predict when in the next 52 weeks will this term be popular? When in the next 52 weeks will this be of interest to an audience? And then you're going to time your search, your content, maybe your ads, and possibly, and definitely your social media to when individual keywords that you're looking for are going to spike the most. So let's look at one that we pulled earlier today because it does take some time. This was event marketing. So we ended up with about 50 event marketing terms, give or take. Predictably, we know that in 4 weeks, experiential agency is going to be the most important search term. So we have to start planning for that content now so that we can have time. In 3 weeks, marketing event and event marketing plan are going to be the most search terms. So we should write our content now, this week, so that it's ready for proofing and prep. Next week, event marketing manager, for example, is going to be one of the most important terms. So we need to publish content this week so that it is available for next week. Search engines have a full week to index it. It's crawled and scraped. And this week, there are some duplicates, but event marketing definition, event marketing, we would want to be promoting. So this is where, from a social media perspective, you would be promoting these words, these phrases, and all the content that you're creating around it. So if you created a downloadable event marketing plan template for your audience, this is the week that you'd be promoting it on social, running ads with it in social media, because you know, based on the way people search and how you forecast search, that interest will be in it the highest for it this week. And so you use this, and then you would obviously monitor using something like Talkwalker to figure out, is it resonating? Is it hitting? Is our forecast actually saying, yep, the audience is interested highest this week for this term, and we're seeing increased engagement over time because we're putting out content when people care about it most. We've been doing this for an agency in Boston, and we have seen their search rankings improve 30-ish% in about 90 days, and we've seen their conversions increase about 300% in 90 days because when they publish something that's relevant to the audience, when the audience wants it, they're much more likely to convert. Like if you like, selling Valentine's Day stuff now, like nobody cares, right? But 40 days ago, it was exactly on target. So there's this huge component of time that is missing from a lot of our analytics because we just kind of assume that, from your standard SEO tool, well, this is the most popular keyword, so we should optimize for that. That's true for Google, but it's not true for the humans who are in your space. So in our process, this is sort of the sixth step, doing that predicting and forecasting, building out our content and using the analytics we have to, yes?
A quick question. I'm sorry that I'm taking you back to the previous
That's
slide. But when you're talking about emerging technologies and the conversation changes rapidly and it's not as stable. So if you look at the last 90 days, you will see probably that it's on a growing trend all the time. So
yes.
How does that work?
The technical answer is the algorithm we use is autoregressive integrated moving averages with seasonality, which is, bear with me.
Let me write that down.
That's English?
Yes, barely. If you think about an average, like the average is a very flat static line, right? And then you have a moving average, moves as things go up and down. And then you have autoregression, which says how likely is the future average to be the next one. And then you use integration to integrate short time windows forward. And then there's a loop in the algorithm for dealing with seasonality. Is there a seasonality to this pattern? That's the preferred algorithm for doing forecasting. However, if no form of predictive analytics can account for black swans, right? It just can't. If you, on September 10th, 2001, right, there was no analytics tool in the world that was going to predict what would happen the next day, right? So there are always limitations to the technology. In B2B, and particularly in enterprise software, there may be new technologies like, industrial IoT, for example, that's just so new that's never existed. But the core benefit that somebody's looking for, I want my data to be faster, I want my data to be cleaner, I want to know if this container got dropped, I want to know if this cargo container exceeded the temperatures of the shipping contract. The outcomes are relatively consistent. All of us as human beings, because we're all very predictable creatures, we all generally want the same things, right? Every consumer, period, wants better, faster, cheaper. That's just the way it is. So if we know the specific outcomes of a technology, even if the technology is new, we can do search volume mapping on the outcomes people are looking for.
And the tool that you're using, is it a proprietary tool for your company?
I wrote that one, but there are a number of software packages, including actually Oracle Advanced Analytics, that have the capability. You always have to write your own code within these tools, but a lot of the tools have modules built in to help you do this stuff. The next section, once you know the stuff, you know when the stuff is going to be happening, you know what stuff you want. The next part is to figure out who else you should be talking to help you promote the stuff. And that is all in the wheelhouse of influencer analytics. There are a bunch of different ways to do influencer analytics to identify influencers. Probably the very simplest one is what's built into tools like Talkwalker, where if you have the topics and you've done a good job of defining the topics and the competitive field, especially the competitive field, you'll be able to pull out people or publications or things that are talking about the thing most. That's the baseline, and I think if you are not doing advanced influencer marketing, it's not a bad place to start, right? So there are, I don't know the iron founder industry, but I'm assuming these are somewhat relevant. There are forums and things to look at, influential authors, average number of mentions. This is where you start for influencer marketing. After this, there are advanced techniques using what's called network graphing, where social analytics for influencers typically look at who gets the most engagement. More primitive systems just look at who's got the most number of followers or who's got the biggest mouth. None of those things accomplish the goal of influence, which is purchase consideration, right? Brand awareness and purchase consideration. What we've found in our own research is that if you were to do a connective map of everybody talking about a topic, or like social media marketing world, and you look at who is most talked about, you'll build a much better model of influence. Influencer identification and figuring out who's influential, there are mathematical algorithms that have been proven through about 5 decades of work to identify who is most important in a network of people. In software and in academia, just to give you a sense, there are 43 separate algorithms that you could use to determine influence. Almost every influencer tool on the market today uses 1 or 2 of them at most, and they're typically run to be fast rather than accurate. Because if you want to do a really good influencer map, it can take you 6, 12, or 18 hours of analysis time to figure out what's happening within a map. I'll show you an example. Let's look at social media marketing world. Let's see, B2B. This is social media marketing world. Wrong one. That's my CEO's dog. So to give you a sense of what you're looking at, we've taken the hashtag, the social media marketing world hashtag, we put it in Talkwalker, and we export out every single use of it. And then we parse out those results of who's talking, and then who they tag, who they mention in their comments. And we use network graphing technology to render it to identify who are the hubs of the network that we would absolutely want to be talking to. Obviously, there's some pretty straightforward things like social media examiner being one of them. But we have this, I don't know who this person is, but there are these really big nodes. That's Dan Genghis out here on this side. Chris Strubb is over here. We have Making there, Christine Gritman over here. These are the folks who are not necessarily being loud, but these are the folks who everyone else is referencing and talking about. So in your industry, in your vertical, what topics, what keywords, what hashtags, what events are people using that you could use to identify who's most influential? If you have if your industry has a trade show, then you can use this sort of modeling to identify who's influential. And it doesn't even have to be social media data. We're doing an experiment right now with academic papers. If someone cites someone else in a publication, there's an opportunity to draw the same kind of mapping, but who's referencing who in books, in newspapers, in publications, and media. So this is sort of the last step of the process, is identify who is influential by who is most talked about, and then you go and you pitch them. If you are using Talkwalker's Influencer One, you can actually load these people into there and then manage them, sort of like a proto CRM. Like, you have to reach out to this person, they told us to go away. Reach out to this person, they wanted $10 million. But the functionality is there. So that's the process, broadly speaking, of how you use. Go ahead, sorry.
Sorry.
That's fine.
I'm always taking one step back. Is there a social listening tool that you know about that actually uses that methodology of who's being most mentioned, and not who's being most vocal or most followers?
No.
Thank you.
Yep. I've talked to Tracker and Analytica and all these influencer platforms, and they use a different measure of centrality. I have a serious axe to grind with a couple of them on their math. The best case ideal would actually be to use, huge surprise, a machine learning algorithm to fit all 43 models onto a map and figure out, like, this model fits best for this thing. Because there are cases, like at an event, you definitely want who's being most talked about at an event. That makes a lot of sense. If there's another centrality measure called harmonic closeness centrality, which measures how close is somebody to everybody else in the network. It's like 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon, right? Who is closest? That measure is better for like a general topic where there's not a specific event, but you just want to see who is the mayor of this tribe. Generally speaking, there's 3 classes of influencer, and this is, again, something that influencer tools don't do well. There is the broadcaster, which is like a Kardashian, right? You just insert the credit card somewhere in the person and tweets them out. Sorry. But they're functionally just an ad channel, is what they really are, right? Big audiences, broad audiences. There is the authority, which is what that most talked about is. Like, when you have somebody who speaks at a conference, they may not even be on social media all that much, but everybody else is talking about their session. You want your product in the hands of that person because they are a legitimate authority. And then there's that third class, which is called a hub or a connector. Malcolm Gladwell calls them connectors in his version of the framework. And those are the people is that like that one friend who's like, oh yeah, I'm looking for this, and it's like, oh, you should talk to so-and-so. Like, that person is the hub of your social network. Each of those models of influencer has a different algorithm to use. So harmonic closeness is the one that you use for the mayor, because the mayor is the person who connected with everybody. You might want a simple engagement metric for a Kardashian, right? Because you just want to see, like, did we get noise out of it? And then you want to use an eigenvector centrality measure for the highest authority ones, which is the one we use for our mapping. Any other questions on that, on the map and that?
Thank you.
Okay.
Question for you.
Yes, sir.
The authority metric, so what is that based off of? What characteristics?
In this one, it's who's most talked about. But you can use, the other thing that I've not been thrilled with in influencer analytics is there's not a whole lot of message pull through. So that's something we were actually coding. We use Talkwalker's data with our own custom code for IBM's event, because I was working at an IBM event, and I said, these are a list of keywords that I'm going to pre-filter the conversations before I even run the influencer model, because I only want to focus on specific things like automated machine learning or industrial IoT, because there's a lot of influencers out there who will use your hashtag and film drunken videos of them singing karaoke at the hotel bar, right? That doesn't help your brand. That doesn't help your consideration. If anything, it diminishes your brand. So you want to be able to, when you do influencer modeling, to have the broad data in Talkwalker, pull it out, filter out the crap, and then look at who's talking about the stuff that we want them to be talking about. Yes?
There's another something that we noticed in the last event that Oracle had,
Mhm.
is that influencers that were actually paid money for it, some of them, not all, but they applied bots to
Yes.
amplify their messages.
Yes.
And what was nice about it is that the next day, all their retweets were gone. Twitter cracked down on them.
Yep.
And removed all their retweets from the conversation. So the first day, you would say, oh, this is an influencer, but he got like 300 retweets. Well, it doesn't make any sense, that number that is not real. And then the next day, he got 9.
So one of the things that we actually had, I've run into that problem a lot. One of the things that, there's a library that we use in our code that looks at the last 100 interactions and judges the likelihood that the account is automated. So we have the raw influencer score here, 0 to 1, and then we basically discount their influence score by how automated their account is. So that by the time you're done, you get a sense, okay, these are people who are probably human, talking about the things we want them to talk about, and then use that for your influencer list. There's an interesting thing that happens with this. So I publish these maps, and you'll see them on Twitter a lot because I publish them around most events, where in the beginning we would publish these and we'll tag the top 10 influencers, like, hey, you're in this thing. And we got some reactions. Once we added the bot or not code and started focusing on the humans, our engagement levels like tripled because there actually are humans minding the shop. It doesn't have to be like, perfectly non-automated, but at least somebody's minding the store. So in a nutshell, that is the use of these advanced technologies with a great platform like Talkwalker to be able to create, identify, and get a leg up on your competition and in your space, building your social media calendar, predicting, forecasting, and integrating your social media work with the other digital departments at your company so that you get maximum impact from the work that you're doing. Because what's going to happen in the next couple of years in social media is what we think of as social today is going to largely go away, right? We are at a point where machines can generate natural language that is credible and believable. And it is a very short matter of time before a company starts saying, well, I'm just going to publish 1 million blog posts today because I had the machine write that. Or I'm going to publish, 10 million tweets and just publish and push them all out because machines can do that and it will sound credible. Influencers in that case, and social media listening in that case will become more important than ever because you'll need to be able to disambiguate who's real and who's not. So make sure that you are using software like Talkwalker today to gather your tribe, to make sure you know who they are, who's legitimate, and nurture them, build relationships with them, because once we flip that switch and we have, the next round of election tampering in Venezuela or whatever, you will need in your space your influencers and your advocates on your behalf to usher you into private communities. How many of you noticed Facebook went down recently? Do you notice what else went down besides Facebook?
Instagram.
WhatsApp.
MailChimp actually had issues too.
You know why? About a month ago, Zuckerberg said, we are pivoting our back-end system to unify WhatsApp, Instagram direct messages, and Facebook Messenger. What happened in the recent outage, my guess is that they went and actually did the deployment and somebody didn't QA the code and it crashed a whole bunch of stuff. But that telegraphs where social is going when the owner of 3 of the biggest networks is saying, we're going all private, right? You're only going to text with your friends on WhatsApp. You're only going to DM your friends on Instagram. They did it because they need to unify their ad inventory. But we can see that we're going to need analytics and we're going to need our influencers and our advocates now before it gets too cluttered, before they all go underground into private communities. So start on all the stuff now. Thank you very much.
So, I'll try to use the mic so you can actually hear me in the back. Thank you so much, Chris. Thank you for joining us today. I know you had a very busy event with a lot of sessions, so it's really testament for you to, show up tonight, have some food with us, have some data with Chris and Talkwalker. So thank you very much. Feel free to, get some more drinks. There's still a lot of food, so please enjoy. And for those who are going to enjoy the party tonight, please enjoy. And everybody that's present today, if you're interested, as a thank you for being present tonight, let us know if you want to try a quick search for free as a free demo for 7 days. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Want help solving your company's data, analytics, and digital marketing problems? Visit trustinsights.ai today and let us know how we can help you.